Okay, we are going to get started. Good morning to everyone who is here. Appreciate you being here. If you need to utilize closed captioning, please use the Zoom feature within your Zoom menu for closed captioning. I wanted to start by introducing myself. My name is Adam Pearl. I'm president and CEO of ArtPride New Jersey. I am a white man in my mid 40s with short brown hair and brown eyes. I'm wearing a blue collared shirt today, and there's a beigeish wall behind me. I'm here in my home office. We really appreciate you being here today. We wanted to say that today we are going to be demystifying tax credits, but this is still, an interesting and complex topic. As is the case with all of our webinars, we are recording. We are recording this webinar. We will put it on our YouTube page, share it out to you who attended and those who signed up but found themselves on a Monday morning unable to attend at last minute, as we know that happens. Um, in addition, there's going to be ample opportunity to ask questions. So we want you to utilize the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of the screen. That's the best place to post questions. Also, keep an eye on the chat. We may drop a link in there. There may be some discussion going on between guests. We want you to utilize that. But questions, please put in the question and answer section. And with that, I am going to introduce my colleague and get it out of the way. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Vanessa Ramalho. Vanessa is our director, ArtPride New Jersey's director of external relations, and is the brain trust behind this morning's webinar and driving force in bringing this information to you. So I'm going to pass it over to Vanessa.
Thanks, Adam. Good morning, everyone. As Adam said, my name is Vanessa Ramalho. I'm the Director of External Relations here at ArtPride New Jersey. My pronouns are she, her. I'm wearing a gray button-up shirt. I have long, curly, dark hair. I am a light-skinned, mixed-race woman. I'm sitting in front of a blue wall in my office in South Jersey. I have some artwork on the left or right side of my head. I'm not sure what direction I'm giving you here, but yeah, on the left side of my head. And I'm sitting next to a window with some light filtering through. Really happy to be here with you all this morning for this really wonderful topic that I'm excited to be in conversation with you all around. But first, I also want to share that we, ArtPride, and our community of arts advocates in New Jersey did a thing last month. So we're also, just want to give a bit of an update of our recent annual trip to Arts Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C. As many of you know, we do this trip every year and are really committed to, organizing advocates from all around New Jersey to go to DC and speak with our elected officials and really talk about all of these different funding advocacy that we are working through across the state. And so we're always looking to improve this event every year as well. And so we definitely did that and had a really amazing time. We had 41 advocates show up this year, which is almost double the attendance of last year. We met with all 12 House representatives and both the senators, and this year was a particularly important year given all of the changes that we are seeing in federal policy and all the challenges that we are seeing in terms of federal funding agencies, NEA, NEH, IMLS funding, as well as arts education. We were super thrilled to see a group of students, young people, also joining us in this work. It's always a wonderful thing to see young people at the high school and college level activated around these issues. We had 12 students from NJ Thespians join us, as well as sponsored a student by the name of Aaron Sadowski, who was the winner of the Democracy Works contest. So we sponsored his attendance, and all the students showed up and shared their stories around the impact of the arts in their lives and in their schools and communities. And it was really super inspiring for us as well as for the elected officials that they got a chance to meet with. We also made, a few changes to how we organize the gathering this year. Really looking at, some of the feedback that we have gotten from the previous year, as well as our own observations and how we can improve things. This year, we partnered with Americans for the Arts, who we've been working very closely with in terms of the advocacy work for the federal funding policy issues. So they invited us to utilize their space, really beautiful space with an amazing view of the Capitol building. We had like breakfast, was able to just gather, the majority of the advocates together for them to network, for them to meet each other, for them to work through, some of their, talking points and how they're going to conduct their meetings. And so it was a really wonderful way for us to come together as a community, ground with each other, and then meet up at the Capitol and feeling like, we're all on the same page and ready to do this work. We also introduced Slack for the first time as a way for us to communicate and collaborate with each other. It was really great to see us all interacting with that space, connecting with each other, setting ourselves up for our later meetings, sharing pictures and videos, and really generating a lot of energy in that space, and really helped us streamline communications. And so that's something that we're going to continue to implement in future trips. We also experimented with a sort of team leader system. So, we had a lot more people to bring together. And so that's just logistically, a lot more to kind of manage. And so Adam, myself, and Vince, served as kind of leaders in various groups where we, introduce the advocates, talk through some of the funding asks, and really kind of leading and facilitating the conversation. But obviously, we can't be in every single meeting, especially when there was 3, 4, even I think sometimes 5 meetings happening concurrently. And so we asked advocates, seasoned advocates who had really have experience doing this work and have, been on this trip with us before, to step up and also be leaders in these conversations. And it was a great way, to show, to step into leadership, positions for other folks joining us on the trip. A great way to kind of share the responsibility of doing that. And I think it really helped all of our teams to feel, really grounded, and that there was a direction, and it was organized, and we all just really had a really amazing time. And so sharing some pictures here of some of the folks who attended. We had some really great conversations with many elected officials and their staffers, and really brought the voices, concerns, and needs of our community and our sector, to the table in a time when, it's really, really needed right now. And so if you haven't been on this trip with us in the past, I hope you may consider it for next year. We do also have ways to advocate from home that we share through social media and on our website. And we just hope this is something that we can continue to grow and expand and strengthen, and continue to have the voice of the arts in New Jersey at the federal level to be heard. Yeah, we're just really excited about, all the work that we've done, that we continue to do, and how passionate, all of our community members out there are in doing this work. And so we thank you so much. Please stay tuned for next year's trip. We'll be outreaching once again for folks to join us. So if you're on our mailing list, you'll get more information about that. And of course, we'll do additional outreach. And if there's other folks that you think, may be interested in joining this work, we always appreciate sharing out that information, inviting other folks that you think can be strong advocates as well to join us. That's really it for me as far as updates on Arts Advocacy Day. Really want to get into the meat of today's session. So I want to introduce Eric Nesmith of Monge Capital. I had the pleasure of meeting Eric at an event hosted by the NJEDA about the cafe program that has just launched. We're super excited about this program. And, I attended that event wanting to learn more about the program. And, I've been in nonprofit pretty much all of my professional life, and just kind of realized, wow, I don't really know a lot about tax credits for nonprofits. And I'm trying to learn about this program. And, I'm like, wow, this sounds really complex, a little complicated, and it felt a little intimidating for me as I was, sitting there learning about it. But it's such a great opportunity for nonprofits to, have access to these tax credits and really support the expansion of these really amazing facilities projects. And so, as part of the event, we were able to meet different folks who are in this tax credit space and connected with Eric and sat down with him. And he just explained things in a way that was like, oh, okay, I think I get how this works. This seems like it could be doable, and there's help out there to help nonprofits navigate it and actually be successful. And the experience that I had with Eric, just sitting down and having him explain all of this to me, how the program works and also what they can do to help make it easier for nonprofits. I was like, yeah, could you actually do this for our membership? Because I just feel like so many of our members could really benefit from, the type of breakdown that Eric was able to provide for me. And so, yeah, so we connected and I was, very excited to, offer this opportunity for him to have this platform and, provide that same level of accessibility to our community to understand this program a little bit better. And so I thank you, Eric, so much and your team for making the time and coming out and sharing all of this wealth of information for our community. And yeah, thank you so much. And I'll hand it over to you to get started on these demystifying tax credits.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Vanessa, and welcome. I want to thank everybody for joining us today's session. We are extremely excited to be here. We appreciate the invite, Vanessa, and I surely do appreciate the kind words. What we're going to be doing here today is we're going to be helping share some strategies for leveraging state tax credits. We're going to be delivering some insights into converting tax credits into liquid assets. And then we're also going to be help you understand how assembling the right team of experts can maximize the benefits of this program. But before we get into the meat of that, I would love to introduce you to Monge Capital so you get a better sense of our firm. Who we are, Monge Capital, we're a minority-owned capital advisory firm based and headquartered here in downtown Newark. We specialize in tax credit financing, capital structuring, and community development advisory services that truly bridges the public and private sectors. We've closed over $2.5 billion of transactions, serving nearly 700,000 people and creating over 17,000 jobs. We provide end-to-end capital advisory services, including tax credit procurement and monetization, which we'll be getting into into depth here. Our team combines deep private equity expertise with on-the-ground community development experience to serve clients across all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico as well. We have some niche expertise in new market tax credits and state tax credit programs, as such as the CAFE program, which we're going to get a bit deeper into here. At Monge Capital, our mission is to be the unparalleled capital advisor in the nation, supporting public and private investment in underserved and disadvantaged communities. We truly believe in doing well while doing good. And with that said, I would like to introduce you to several members of our leadership team joining me here today. First, I'm going to have Jeff Monge, the firm's founder and managing partner, introduce himself, and then he'll be followed by Lillian Plata, who is a senior advisor to the firm.
Hi, thank you for having us today. Jeff Monge. Monge Capital was created almost 16 years ago, and really trying to leverage my background. I started out in the nonprofit world on the economic development side. Most of my early work was at the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone with Harlem and Washington Heights, and during those travels, worked a lot on nonprofits and specifically those in arts and cultural initiatives, including the Apollo, El Museo del Barrio, Alianza Dominicana Cultural Center. Did 10 years of private equity thereafter, only focused in low-income community investments, again, trying to focus on doing good and doing well, and then took that private capital, government, private partnership investment experience into launching Monge Capital. Lily?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lillian Plata, Senior Advisor on the Monge Capital team. I come from a legal background by trade. I'm an attorney by trade. I've had about 20 plus years of experience representing developers and nonprofits, assisting them leverage all sorts of tax credits, especially in New Jersey with the, when CAFE was actually the hub program and the ERG program. As well, doing some pretty major transactions like Teachers Village in Newark, and also the American Dream Project, which a lot of folks know about, the ginormous mall that used to be the former Xanadu Project, that leveraged actually the largest syndication of ERG tax credits at the time. And so I come from that background. I joined the Monge team about 2 months ago. Jeff and I have actually closed quite a number, or a significant number of deals over the last 10 years together. And so I'm excited to be part of this crew and joining on the senior advisory side of things.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Lillian. I'm going to introduce myself as well in a little bit more detail. I'm Eric Neesmith. I'm Manager of Capital Solutions here at Monge Capital. I've been with the firm coming up on about a year. I'm a career real estate finance professional, about 15 years of experience. First beginning in traditional commercial real estate finance with stints at Prudential and JP Morgan. Then I took my talents to community development banking and financed affordable housing for a few years at JP Morgan as well, before going into the advisory side of things and leading large-scale economic development strategies, as well as real estate and capital advisory. I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff, who is going to walk us through a few of our projects, which we believe you may find of interest and have some real synergy with today's topic.
Thanks, Eric. So we're going to go over a handful of deals, and some of these are materially large in scope, but don't let that take you aback, because we have worked on all levels of investments nationally. The first one, I think, is pretty significant, and as it relates to the EDA Aspire credit. We represented the New Jersey Performing Arts Center in their major master plan in downtown Newark, and this was one of the largest, if not the largest, executed Aspire credit in the state. The other one that we worked on, again, one of the EDA products prior that we talked about before, with this was actually Grow New Jersey credit. We did the Innovation Cathedral, representing Fidelco, a realty group who partnered up with Audible in the historic renovation of an old church that's dilapidated for over at least a decade, into its headquarters in downtown Newark. Again, these are all collections of private capital, grants, bridging of grants, and then, of course, monetizing tax credits. The other two rather recent transactions, one was a studio museum in Harlem, which is actually almost, I think they had their opening. If not, they're going to in the very near term on 125th Street. Again, we leverage new market tax credits. We leverage city-state funds, which we were able to bridge on this $125 million project. And then we also represented the New York Public Library in their renovations of the Schomburg Center, also in Harlem. Destination Crenshaw was actually an infrastructure project that's actually coming out of the ground now, and they will be having their initial ribbon cutting of their first a part of the project. But this is an outdoor museum walk is probably the best way of describing it. But the great component of this, and if you haven't checked out I know Destination Crenshaw, please look it up on the website. They're doing some amazing things. One of the initiatives that they have here is supporting 100 minority artists, where they're getting them certified with the city and the state to be able to be in the pipeline of entrepreneurs being able to be eligible for different art installations throughout the city and the state. Another great example is La Casa. This was a project. There are a lot of nonprofits that not only provide arts and cultural initiatives and activities, but they also do other things. So here goes an arts and cultural group that actually went into affordable housing to really try to make sure that they're able to keep the community intact while being able to serve them. And we were able to put together this project with bond financing, tax credits for their new cultural and arts and education center. And this is, by the way, this was in Boston, Massachusetts, and Destination Crenshaw was in Los Angeles. So the last thing before I switch it over to Eric is, again, right, these are pretty large scale projects. You're going from, in $200 million down to $32 million, but they're all sizes as it pertains to capital projects. So don't let the numbers throw you off in totality. Eric.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you walking us through some of our past projects. And before we jump into the meat of today's topic, demystifying tax credits, first I want to just take a brief overview of the CAFE program in general. I'm sure most of you are aware of it, but just want to set the table here. Some of the key features of the program are 100% of the eligible project costs, which I find to be one of the really rewarding aspects of this program. Maximum awards of up to 75 million. So you can kind of put that into comparison with the scale of some of the projects that we just viewed. And then the tax credits that are awarded are transferable, and it can be sold to investors, which we'll go through when we talk deeply about monetizing the tax credits. Again, minimum project size of 5 million, and the project should be shovel ready, but not yet under construction, as the beginning construction is strictly prohibited by the CAFE program guidelines. So now we'll get into leveraging state tax credits with other public and private financing. It is a very crucial component to maximize the benefit of these type of state credit funding sources. So what we'll cover is helping you understand how to align state tax credits with some of these other funding sources, whether that's pairing CAFE tax credits with new market tax credits or philanthropic capital, or using PREI or PRIs from foundations, or even tapping into local economic development incentives. There are going to be some really key things that you have to consider here. And these are all going to be very important in building a sustainable financing strategy for your organization. And then lastly, we'll cover avoiding some common pitfalls when combining some of these funding sources. So we're going to talk through 7 key considerations to give thought to as you are taking this this approach of leveraging the state tax credits with these other sources. First, number one, flow of funds and timing. You need to have an understanding of when and how the funds will be dispersed across these different sources. Again, these could include grants, loans, equity, tax credit proceeds. They can all have their own different funding mechanisms, and timing mismatches can lead to funding gaps. So there also may be components where bridge financing may be needed in order to maintain construction schedules or even reimburse eligible costs. Number two, collateral and security interest. Different funders may require security interest in the same property or asset, and this could create potential conflicts. It's important to establish clear intercreditor agreements and understand senior versus subordinate lien positions very early in the negotiation. Use of funds and eligible expenses. Each funding source has specific restrictions on what costs can be covered. For example, some grants may not allow reimbursement of soft costs. And on the flip side, some tax credits may only apply to hard costs. I think fortunately for the CAFE program, both soft costs and hard costs are allowed. And as I mentioned before, I think this is one of the more beneficial programs as it pertains to eligible expenses. I think one of the a word of advice here, I believe, would be to build a funding matrix to ensure that there's no duplication of the use of funds and that you have full coverage across your budget. 4, reporting and compliance. You should be sure to ensure that you have the capacity to meet the reporting requirements for each funding stream. This can include programmatic reporting, financial disclosures, impact or community benefit tracking, which is common for new market tax credits and other foundation grants. A misalignment in reporting periods or definitions of success can lead to compliance risk and ultimately can lead to loss of the tax credit benefit. These are complex transactions with multiple institutions. State and federal tax credit deals often involve layered capital with 3 to 5 or more financing partners. This should include CDFIs, commercial banks, tax credit syndicators, foundations, leverage lenders. There can be a ton of different stakeholders involved. So the coordination amongst these stakeholders is going to be critical to maintain timelines and move towards an efficient closing. 6, we have to consider the capital markets, right? And there are really 2 primary components to this. First is the tax credit pricing. Tax credit pricing is going to vary based on program. It's going to vary based on investor appetite, the perceived risk, the deal structure, and the availability of those credits at that particular period of time. The fluctuations in these tax credit pricing can materially affect the amount of equity that the project can raise. And the second component of that is the cost of capital. You should be considering the interest rate, the origination fees, the risk premiums that may be there across all of your capital sources. It's really important for nonprofits to balance low-cost, mission-driven capital like PRIs or CDFI loans with traditional debt to ensure long-term sustainability. And then lastly, number 7, again, to the complexity of these transactions. Tax credit deals often require specialized counsel to navigate things like entity structuring, allocation agreements, regulatory filings. So it is paramount to have an experienced legal and financial advisory team in place to help prevent costly delays and to also ensure alignment with NJEDA and the IRS requirements. I'm going to stop here and give an opportunity for questions.
Eric, you're good. I think you're covering it well. No, at the moment, no questions from the audience, but I will remind folks to please put them in questions and answers or the chat, whatever works for you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. So now moving from leveraging the state tax credits with other financing sources, which is what we want to cover, we also want to help you understand the process of monetizing tax credits and what to expect there. Right, so what we're going to cover in this component of the webinar are really how tax credits are sold and syndicated to the investors. We'll get into some of the key players and the expectations, and then we'll help you understand some legal and compliance requirements for nonprofits in these transactions. So firstly, a couple of things before we jump all the way in, right? Tax credits are not cash. I repeat, tax credits are not cash, right? So when you're monetizing state tax credits into real and usable capital, right? You're going to be converting those credits that your project is awarded by selling them to a third party or by syndicating them to investors. You're not going to take that tax credit award and just simply deposit it into your account as cash. You know, this monetization process is going to generate early phase capital, right? To provide liquidity for the construction, the purchases of equipment, and then for other eligible expenses as the program may allow. Again, some other things to be aware of is the value of tax credits and also just the level of complexity and expertise that will be necessary as you're going to be required to interface and engage with investors and other financial intermediaries. So now I'm going to walk you through a step-by-step of how an example of how tax credits are sold and syndicated. First, the nonprofit applies for and is awarded the state tax credit, you know, whether this is CAFE or this is Aspire. The NJEDA or the other agencies will issue an allocation notice or some sort of certification that you have been successfully awarded those tax credits. Step two, you're going to engage with a tax credit consultant or a syndicator to help you assess the market value of that credit. You know, kind of going back to some of those other factors that we talked to previously about the capital markets, right? You're going to have to develop an understanding of what the value of that credit is at that period of time, or even when you're going to be ready to, you know, close and actually sell these tax credits that have been awarded. The consultant or the syndicator is going to assist you with investor outreach and then also deal structuring during this stage as well. Step three, you're going to determine a monetization approach. This happens in a couple of different ways. One is a direct sell where the nonprofit sells the tax credit to a third-party buyer. Another approach is an allocation approach where the nonprofit enters into a partnership structure whereby the tax credits are then passed through the investor through that structured entity. Step four, you're going to negotiate the purchase price and terms. Again, this is going to be based on market pricing at that time, the transaction risk. You know, tax credits typically sell at a discount on the dollar. although pricing could vary from program to program, which is also dependent on the benefit. I think one of the real material benefits here with the CAFE state tax credit program is that it is a dollar for dollar tax credit benefit to the investor, which obviously would make it a pretty attractive tax credit in the market. Step 5, legal structuring and documentation. At this point, you're going to be preparing the sale agreements, the partnership documents, if that's applicable, tax-related disclosures. The legal counsel will be finalizing the terms that are going to satisfy both state compliance and the investor expectations at this stage. Once that's all complete, we're going to move towards a closing, right? And if the funds are available at that time, again, depending on the mechanics of the tax credit program, then funds will be transferred to the nonprofit or the allocation thereof. At this time, you're going to execute the legal documents, and the filings are going to be made with the relevant authorities. And then lastly, step 7, you're going to have post-closing compliance, where this is going to include ongoing reporting and tracking to maintain the project eligibility and continued investor benefit. For example, in the case of the CAFE award, the award is issued annually, and you have to maintain eligibility for that for the project year to year, and you have to submit and report to prove your eligibility in each year. I'm gonna pause again there for questions if there are any out there.
Doesn't look like there's any questions as of right now, but definitely, I know it's a lot of content, but feel free to think of anything that you might be wondering more about. But it looks like you can keep moving forward, Eric.
Awesome. I'm gonna keep rolling. We just have a couple more slides to cover here, and then we can fully open it up to Q&A. So now that we've kind of talked through what to expect, and then kind of step by step the process of monetizing tax credits, let's get into some of the key players involved in these transactions. The nonprofit sponsor is going to be you. These are going to be folks who are going to be leading the project and ultimately will hold the tax credit award. You also have the tax credit investor, or the syndicator will be involved there as well. These are going to be the folks who are going to be providing the capital in exchange for the tax credit benefits, and also facilitating the deal structuring. The investor is going to expect timely documentation, risk mitigation, and the syndicator is really going to be dependent on an efficient process and compliance. You also will have legal counsel involved, who's going to advise on the transaction structure and draft documents. And then lastly, EDA, who's issuing the credit, and accountants and auditors. So this is just to give you a sense of the ecosystem in order that will be the ecosystem that will exist as you go to complete these tax credit transactions where we're monetizing them. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Lillian, who is going to just walk you through some legal and compliance requirements for nonprofits, and some things nonprofits should be considering in the monetization process.
Right, and I think there's a sort of two things that we're talking about here, Eric. Thank you. One is sort of the nonprofit realm itself, in terms of making sure that maintains its eligibility as a nonprofit in order to qualify for certain of the programs, especially the CAFE program. But then it's also complying with the program itself and the nuances with respect to whichever tax credit program you are applying for or you're eligible for. And I know here we're talking about the CAFE program. So, you know, for instance, you want to make sure that you don't have commence, you know, construction before you actually receive the award. You want to make sure that you have your financing gap as part of your eligibility. And those are just two sort of, I want to just sort of point out of eligibility that you really want to ensure that you understand the nuances of the program and the CAFE program in terms of what you should or can or should be doing in order to maintain the eligibility as a nonprofit itself. I'm sure, as you all know, to maintain your nonprofit status, you have to actually, you know, file your 990s every year to make sure that you maintain that. You also have to, from a state tax credit perspective, you want to make sure that you stay in compliance with the Employment and Labor Department of Environmental Protection. And you also want to make sure that you maintain, you know, in good standing, basically, with the state of New Jersey in terms of taxes and treasury, right? So one of the things I wanted to just back up, Eric, just to mention, when you mentioned flow of funds, one of the things you want to keep in mind is if you're having a grant as part of your sources of funds, make sure you know what type of grant, if it's a reimbursement grant or not. I also wanted to make sure that you understand from a use of funds perspective, that you understand that there are certain costs that you can't actually use the CAFE tax credit program for, or they wouldn't be included as eligible costs, such as like acquisition of land. So little things like that. And I know Eric has really done a great job highlighting all of the different professionals, but you definitely want legal counsel on board so that they can help you navigate some of the eligibility and structuring requirements. And I know, again, we're talking about state tax credits. So I want to emphasize that these are not credits against federal taxes. These are credits against your state taxes. And obviously, as a nonprofit, you do not benefit from a tax credit, which is why it is important for you to sell them, monetize them, which is something that this team assists with and helps out with. But you really can't turn your tax credits into liquidity unless you find a private entity that actually can benefit from claiming them. And in the state of New Jersey, your purchases can look like an insurance company, which needs to claim tax credits against their premiums, and also like corporate tax credits. So I just also wanted to highlight as well. So how do you, as a nonprofit, take advantage of these tax credits and make them liquid? You have to find a private entity that has tax credit liability in the state of New Jersey for them to actually claim it against. So as far as maintaining your eligibility, again, it's making sure that all of the activities that you undertake as a nonprofit are in furtherance of your tax exempt purpose. So just make sure that you're always in compliance with filing your 990s and also the activities that you undertake. Tracking funds for the tax credit program, again, it's just a matter of ensuring that in your use of funds, when you're looking at the project costs, that they are actually going to the portions of the project that are eligible for the financing under the CAFE program, right? So you can't take your tax credit and fund it under something that is not commensurate with what the CAFE program is going to finance, or another tax credit program, such as like the New Market Tax Credit Program. Eric mentioned fulfilling reporting obligations. When you get awarded the tax credit award from like NJEDA, you'll have a tax credit agreement with the NJEDA that will spell out sort of all of the things that you have to do to report to the EDA to maintain your eligibility to receive the tax credits, which is something that you'll agree to when you do monetize them with the purchaser of the tax credits, to ensure that they are able to receive that certificate that's issued by the state of New Jersey in order for them to claim their tax credits. The fourth thing that you want to avoid, obviously, as a nonprofit, that I'm sure most of you are aware of, is unrelated business income tax, which is essentially from a federal perspective, if more than 25% of your activities, whether they're revenue or actual activities, are generated against your total income as a nonprofit, you can jeopardize your tax exempt status. So that's one of the things that you want to monitor and ensure that all of your activities as a nonprofit is, again, in furtherance of your C3 status and why you've received your nonprofit, both on state and federal levels. And, you know, Eric and I have talked about, you know, nonprofits needing to stay audit ready, and that is part of the program. You should really have advisors, whether legal or CPAs or consultants, that'll help you sort of review all of your agreements and all of your revenues, all of your activities, to ensure that as a nonprofit, you are in compliance with, again, in furtherance of, you know, your tax exempt purpose.
Thank you, Lillian. I appreciate you digging in deep there. Lastly, so we have talked through strategies for leveraging state tax credits with other funding sources. We've talked through the mechanics of monetizing tax credits. So lastly, we're just going to close out on what we believe makes a strong application and helps the nonprofits really position their applications for success, especially as it pertains to CAFE. First, the financial feasibility and performing a risk assessment. You know, the application should include detailed budgets, pro formas, cash flow projections, right? You should be able to clearly demonstrate the project's financial sustainability. And then also you should identify any funding gaps and be able to speak to how they will be filled. Second, the capital and tax credit strategy is going to be extremely important. You know, you're gonna have to align your project's capital stack with the EDA's program, and then you have to ensure timing, compliance, and reporting requirements, just as we just really talked through, are clearly addressed. They're also it's also really going to be important that you structure the tax credits in a way to unlock early phase funding, such as monetizing tax credits, which we just talked through. Three, leveraging other sources of funding. You know, not only is it going to allow you to really maximize the tax credit benefit, in the case of the application, in the case of the CAFE application scoring, the ability to show a diverse and resilient capital stack is going to allow you to get more points on the scoring rubric. And then lastly, third-party reports. You really should be sure to include the key supporting documentation, such as the market and feasibility studies that may have been done, appraisals, any analysis of the economic impact and the community benefit. These reports should be tight, and they should be present within your application, because these reports are really going to validate the project's community alignment and also the financial case as it's presented to the EDA board. So I want to thank you all for joining us on this webinar to demystify tax credits. I hope that we were able to really help you understand just how much work is necessary to complete some of these complex transactions, but also you know, give you a little bit of comfort that, you know, there are folks out there who have tons of experience in completing these type of transactions and are ready to guide you through the process. So at this time, I believe we're gonna open the floor back up for questions, if there are any.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that, Eric, Lillian, Jeff. Thank you. Yeah, so we have a couple of questions. I know Vanessa is going to come on here too. And if Eric, if you want to stop sharing screen, we could probably just go to talking heads boxes. So the first question was, these are both from anonymous attendees. So the first question is, you noted that the EDA wants shovel-ready projects. What exactly does that mean, and where do they clarify that in the app and info?
Right. So, shovel ready means that, as far as a construction readiness, you have gone through just about all of the pre-development process. So that is drawings, budget, schedule. You have engaged a construction manager to understand what it's going to take in order for it to get built. And that the last thing that you're waiting on is the financing in order to really get the project started. So, and get shovels in the ground actually. So that's what shovel ready means. EDA defines it pretty much as exactly that. There is an expectation that some of the financing will continue to be solidified as the project moves towards a CAFE award. But from a construction readiness standpoint, you really have to have gone through the vast majority of the pre-development process.
Yeah, and that, Eric, if I may, that also includes like land use approvals. You may not have completely needed to have a permit in your hand also, but it should be imminent. But you should actually have gone through all of like your land use approvals with the towns.
Want to add
and Adam,
Oh,
I would just add there was a component of the question about where does EDA I guess look for this support. So one of the requirements for the CAFE application is a letter of support from the municipality. And that is where you will evidence that you've gone through primarily the pre-development process, as Lillian was speaking to, as well as you will show with your with some of the other feasibility analysis components that you've gone through with the pre-construction process.
I wanted to add to that response as well. So for folks who, maybe have an idea or a dream, but are kind of, feeling like you're not at that shovel-ready space, please continue to be in communication with us at ArtPride New Jersey, because there are also additional resources of folks that I've connected with at the EDA event that can provide a different kind of support for maybe a different phase that you may be in this kind of visioning for your organization. So there are also other resources that might help you with the sort of preparing and the readiness to become shovel ready before working with a firm like Monge Capital. So just wanted to also put that out there, that there's additional resources we can also share to support with that.
So the next question that I had comes from Grace Shackney, and Lillian, I know you were touching on this, but can you talk a little bit more about just sort of the caution around alienating the folks' mission, a nonprofit organization's mission, in a public-private partnership? What some of those, what some of that caution concern might be?
So you definitely want to. So if you are partnering in with a for-profit entity, you want to make sure that the focus of the project that you are being involved in, whether or not you're entering into a partnership, that you are actually moving, basically, it is in furtherance of your purpose, right? So if you are going into, constructing a music hall or arts and cultural center, and you're a part of that partnership, you want to make sure that the end users, the end support, the end community impact, even though you're entering into the sort of this complex structure and syndicating tax credits, that the ultimate goal is really in furtherance of your taxes and purpose, because then you really don't have to include the income, the activities and things like that as sort of unrelated trade or business. There are PLRs out there that talk about entering into leases themselves, in and of themselves, partnerships in and of themselves are considered unrelated trade or business. But if you can show and demonstrate that entering into those types of agreements, those types of structures are in furtherance of providing arts and culture, or whatever it is that your nonprofit status was awarded under, that you should be fine. But it really does sometimes take legal counsel or advisors such as our team, to really parse through sort of that, threading the needle to make sure that you're not running afoul of your exempt purpose. Also, one of the things I find that some for-profit developers do not fully appreciate and try to sort of rope in nonprofits to providing guarantees or funding reserves at certain levels that they shouldn't. There's actually prohibitions against that. And so one of the objective ways you can push back at for-profit partners is to say, we are not allowed to do that. It's not even that we don't want to support that aspect, but we're not allowed to give guarantees that don't burn off. We're not allowed to fund reserves up until a certain level. So those are the things that you want to consider when you are entering into certain structurings for syndicating of tax credit.
Thank you. The next question is again in the Q&A. This is anonymous attendees saying they've been dedicated to cultural arts and education business, to their cultural arts education business in New Jersey for 13 years. They're a small business owner and they're working and interested in the cafe project. They believe their business has potential for it. And we kind of know the answer to this, so this is why I'm smiling. Does the EDA offer funding or support for small businesses, or is the assistance available for nonprofit organizations only? So yes, I'll start by saying, just generally speaking, yes, the EDA absolutely has a whole menu of opportunities for small businesses. Again, we can connect you to some of the folks from the EDA. I know a few folks, including our friend Barbara Bickert, are in attendance today. But I don't know if Erica or Lillian or Jeff, you wanted to speak just specifically to the CAFE program around businesses versus nonprofits. But generally speaking, EDA has a lot to offer businesses.
Yeah, I think the only material difference that I can think to for, I guess, for-profit versus nonprofit businesses when it comes to the CAFE program is the requirement that if it is a for-profit business, that they are also in receipt of historic tax credits. I think that is and it's pretty cut and clear there for for-profit organizations applying to the program. That requirement doesn't exist for nonprofit.
Okay, so the next question we had comes from Brishan Miller. Hi, Brishan. So we are part of several projects. However, we won't have time to get shovel ready by the CAFE deadline. Our tax credits are a regular source of funding from the state. Should we prepare for other tax credit programs?
From the best of my knowledge, the EDA, this will not be the only round of opportunity to apply for the CAFE program. They have said on several occasions that there will be at least one more opportunity this year. And I believe that there is legislation perhaps that is being considered to move towards a rolling application process.
And I would add too, and Vanessa, maybe we can share a link to this in the follow-up email that we send to everybody. But the EDA is having their own webinar on May 14th at 10 a.m. That is business banking products for nonprofits webinar, where they're talking about their whole menu of different opportunities. And so I would encourage folks to attend that. There may be some things that they talk about there, and at the very least, you could certainly ask questions directly to the EDA staff. But I know. Again, thankfully to the leadership at the EDA, they're doing the best they can to make their products accessible and available for nonprofits, and particularly for the arts and cultural community. So maybe we can drop that link in the chat and then also put it in the follow-up.
And Adam, if I just want to just expand on that, we are beyond on the EDA side. Obviously, we have our expertise there, but we also have a niche expertise in federal new market tax credits. And we've been doing that since the very beginning of the program and funded a lot of arts and cultural organizations with that federal credit. There's probably about $4 billion worth of those credits still available in the market, and another $10 billion of credits that have been approved by Congress and supposed to come out later on this year. So if there's any interest as it pertains to capital projects and seeing how new market tax credits could play a role, we're definitely open to having that conversation.
Awesome. And we're just putting a couple links here in the chat for you, one to the cafe program, one to the AEDA events. We had a question from Mike Stotts. Hi, Mike. There is a requirement for the organization holding 20% equity in the project. What does that mean for organizations that are leasing their property?
I think that there are particular guidelines on the limitations on just how much could be leased, whether that's square footage or whether that is based upon the income being expected. I do not believe that the 20% equity requirement, that there's any difference if you are leasing or not. The 20% equity requirement just in general applies to the capital project in general, but some other mechanics may be different for leasing.
Right, and I do think it's important to note, right, Eric, that if you are in what's called a government restricted municipality, which is either Atlantic City, Patterson, or Trenton, that 20% equity is reduced to 10%. So that might help some folks who are located in that area. But Eric is correct that it's really just governed by, if your project cost is, $10 million, the 20% of that you can put in of equity is what's considered. It's not really driven by whether or not you have a lease on the project or at that site rather.
And just lastly, that equity requirement can be filled in a number of different ways. It's not just cash. It can be from fundraising. It could be from proceeds from other tax credit programs. It could also be from grants. It just cannot come from other NJEDA issued subsidy to that particular project. But as I was saying, there are a few different ways that you can fill that 20% equity requirement, and then 10% in some cases, as Lillian was speaking to.
Right, and you can do capital campaigns, right, to sort of raise equity for your project, but I would be careful about not raising too much in case you can't show a financing gap and take you out of that. Just be mindful of all those things.
Oh, go ahead, Vanessa. I
had a couple of questions that were also posed directly to me anonymously that I will pose for the benefit of the group. How much should an organization be prepared to pay upfront for working with these types of professional financial services to help organize and guide their project?
I'll start there. Our research, right, as we obviously provide such services, we've seen it all over the park, right? So as it pertains to what we're trying to do as a firm, we're looking at trying to support folks from the application process all the way to completion. So that's writing an application, that's actually looking at monetizing the credits, also being able to find a buyer as well. So you find a buyer, you monetize them, so you have that capital available for your project, and then we look at doing what we do historically, which is real estate capital advisory work, where if there's gaps in the capital stack that we can help with, and any assistance necessary on the structuring and underwriting of the project, that's something that we could do. And as it pertains to what we do, the vast majority of what we do is success-based driven. And while you have some folks that do each of the different components that we are trying to offer up comprehensively. And so that those are different. You know, some people do hourly, some people do, very different than what we're doing. But you know, big picture is that normally what you'll see in the industry is people have their expertise and their different components that we're trying to offer up our expertise in a comprehensive way, because we do have the full scale of services. But anybody wanted to reach out to us directly about their project, every project is different. Every service menu is going to be different, and we could provide that greater feedback.
Vanessa, I had a question too and then we'll go back and forth if that's okay. So we have another one posted in the Q&A. And again, I don't know if you're aware of these or if we should just continue to point people to EDA, but do you know of any opportunities for projects that have already begun construction to qualify for tax credits? I don't think that's the case, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, not under the cafe program, but again, right there's other, new market tax credits. Again, is very, very flexible tax credit program that could be available. But there's also, while not subsidy directly or something that translates to subsidy at the end of the day, there are, CDFIs, community development financing institutions that fund projects. Obviously, they need to underwrite as such, but they fund projects. If you have capital campaigns that are in the mix, a lot of those are, come in at different stages, meeting different thresholds. We are able to monetize capital campaigns to be able to do capital projects. And a great example is we just recently closed the Hip Hop Museum in the Bronx a couple of weeks ago. That was with new market tax credits, and then we monetize city, state, and federal grants up front in order to build out their museum out in the Bronx.
I have another question that I can ask on an anonymous person's behalf. If an applicant org applies for $50 million worth of tax credits, how much can they expect to get in cash to pay for construction? Is there an approximate formula?
Yeah, there's not really an approximate formula. I think there's a number of different market conditions that we did speak to, right, that are gonna really kind of drive the ultimate net benefit to the a project. I think generally what you should expect is probably somewhere between 50 to 60% of the tax credit award. And that is after, finding a bridge solution and then monetizing it. So, I believe EBA promotes somewhere around 60 to 70% of what you should expect to be bridged. But then after monetizing it, I would say you're probably looking at closer to 50 to 60% in that range.
And just to add, Eric, I think it should be noted that the CAFE requires, or rather EDA requires 85 cents on the dollar for a transfer. With, our present value would be different. It's probably a little too technical for this answer, but just there is a minimum threshold that the EDA requires for transfers.
But just so we don't, let's just make sure that we're all on the same page, right? So someone buys it for a minimum of the 85% but someone that's going to come in and bridge that cash flow, that 5-year cash flow, is totally most of the time is a totally different entity that's going to lend you the money, that and the repayment source for that money is that cash flow that's coming in from that tax credit investor. So that's why that is discounted. The 85% plus is discounted downward to the 60, 70% that Eric mentioned. And the person that's in the entity that's coming in to bridge that, they're underwriting the project, right? Because although the payment source is the tax credit investor, the project needs to get completed, right? So they're underwriting the expectation of that project being completed, successful. So therefore, that the tax credit investor is able to come in and fluidly be able to purchase those credits over that 5-year period.
I did have another question here from Mark Morgan. Hey, Mark, how's it going? Mark said he did actually speak with you, Eric, at the NJEDA event. He says thank you. And so he's curious, and I think this is a good question for the entire group. What would be the first step to scheduling an exploratory meeting with Eric or Jeff or you, Lillian, with the team at Monge? What's the first step? How can someone reach out and talk to you about this if there might be potential to work together?
Yeah, you could shoot me a note directly, and I can be sure that my contact information is passed along. I would just say, include background on the project, some information on where you are in the overall process as far as being, as we talked about, being shovel ready. And then also where your capital stack is today, so we can get a bit of a sense of one, how we can support you, throughout the process, and then also we can get a bit of an understanding of just where you are in that process, and we could strategically plan accordingly.
Great. Vanessa, you good? Okay. I think that covers it for questions and answers. I just want to say thank you again to Eric, Lillian, Jeff for sharing your knowledge and your expertise. And I think we were successful in demystifying the tax credits for folks, and starting to get people to wrap their mind around it. Just looking at the attendee list, I think there's some real opportunity for this program, the CAFE program, to have true impact across the state. So really excited about that. I'm just going to wrap up by saying we have a number of different ArtPride New Jersey events coming up, and we just encourage folks to continue to attend them. On May 15th, in partnership with our friends at the New Jersey Theater Alliance, we have the next Creating Change Roundtable that is about writing through difficult emotions. On May 30th, we have the Jersey Arts Marketers, the Jam in-person event at New Brunswick Performing Arts Center. And so we encourage you to sign up if you haven't already, or the folks that that are working in marketing across New Jersey, to please sign up for that as well. And then it's not quite on the website yet, but it should be within the next week or so. We have on June 2nd, it will be our next ArtPride webinar, 10 a.m. for our annual meeting. So again, thank you to Vanessa for bringing this to the membership. We appreciate you doing what you do and bringing these great resources to our membership. And thank you as well to the entire team at Monge. And hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Take care.